Hey guys, welcome to another Q&A session from the Reaper blog. I am John. The YouTube channel has passed 11,000 subscribers. I'm sorry this video is a little late. I keep putting off making this video. The next video will be at 12,000 subscribers instead of 11,500. These videos are just a lot of stress for me. They're supposed to be fun and I worry about how they look. I don't really get better at making them. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you everyone that has subscribed, donated, shared videos, commented, liked on Facebook, followed me on Twitter, all the conversations that we've been having on social media. It's really great. I love doing this stuff. So I hope you guys will help spread the word and grow this kind of community around the Reaper blog, around Reaper. Help me keep doing this because I'm having a lot of fun. But anyways, in this video, we have 5 questions that come in from fans and I'm going to answer them. Thank you everyone that has sent in questions. I will get to all of them eventually. I get so many emails from the past month for this show and I can only pick 5. So thank you so much to everyone that has sent in a question. I will try to answer when I can through the email or else I'll do a video on it eventually. First question comes from Drake Horde. I was watching a mixing video and the mixer was using a third-party VU meter. I don't want to get out of control buying plugins I don't need right now, but can you recommend any that are good for mixing that complement Reaper? So let's limit this to just the VU meter plugin so you don't get out of control. One of my favorite plugins of all time is the Klanghelm VOMT. The deluxe version that just came out is awesome. I have a video just on that. It's, I don't know, 10 minutes or so of just geeking out, showing how to use it. And there's so many things you can do with it in the deluxe version. In addition to being a really good VU meter for a low price, it has monitoring options, so you can monitor the side signal, you can flip the left and rights, you can adjust the balance of the mid and side or left and right. It has high pass and low pass filters, and also it has a dynamic EQ and also a way to mono the low end so that so you get more clarity in the center. It's a great plugin. It's not that much money. It's like $40 maybe, but it's something that you can use in mastering, mixing individual tracks. It's a great problem solver. I used it a lot on a film mix that I was doing in the last couple of months. But I'm using it in like almost every project. It's just that versatile. Next question comes from Clarke Martty. I've had a mixing engineer say something to the effect of normalizing is not a good thing to do for levels when rendering out. What is the verdict on normalizing tracks? Often normalizing is used to get the maximum signal level, meaning that they haven't gain staged correctly. I tend to use it the other way to balance all my tracks to get a good starting point. So if I get a mixing project, I drop my files in, I hit play, it's probably going to be at like plus 12 on the master. I could turn the tracks down, or I could turn the items down, or I could just click 2 buttons to normalize them, and then my master's not clipping, and everything kind of sounds at a good starting point to begin with. So it kind of depends on the number of tracks. So average mix would be minus 30 to minus 36 LUFS. So I'll just select all, hit the SWS normalize loudness, and type in like minus 36, hit process. It takes a couple seconds. Then I can hit play, and it sounds like a song. For me, it's a good starting point. I don't always keep it like that. I might have to go higher or lower depending on how many tracks there are in the project. Most of the time, that is turning things down, not just turning them up to 0 dB FS and leaving no room for processing. That's the most common problem that you run into with people normalizing everything. You run out of headroom. If it's already at 0, you can't process above that and without having to turn it down later. So there's no point. Turn it down, apply their processing, and then bring it up if it needs to be that loud. But usually your combined tracks are pushing your master bus pretty hard as it is. So not always necessary. Another common use of normalizing is for creating game assets or for a sample library. So you've created all your sounds, you export them, and you want them to be really consistent in your sampler or in the game engine. So you would use normalizing to get them all to -6 dBFS or 0 if that's what works best for the game engine or your sampler, whatever you need, but you can get every file exactly the same.
Pim V Dorst writes in, can you explain the proper way to use the trim volume option? When and why?
So recently in version 5, they added a trim volume envelope. This is kind of parallel to the main fader. And what I use, actually what I used it for just yesterday, was I had a mix that I needed to bump the volume of the vocal up a little bit, but I've already done volume rides on it. I've already have automation written there. But with the trim volume envelope, you can audition that, you can bypass it if you're not sure about that change. And then using the action list, you can apply that to the main fader level, or just leave it as is, just as a way to augment the automation that's already written to the volume fader. So that's what I use it for, works great.
Next question comes from Stephen Lewis. Do you feel all the stock plugins with Reaper match or exceed Premiere paid plugins? Which Reaper plugins do you feel are best, which are lacking, and have forced you to download or purchase external plugins?
I had a big collection of plugins even before I started Reaper. There's always going to be better software, better tools for the job as the job changes, as technology improves, and sometimes it's better sound quality, sometimes it's new technology or techniques, sometimes it's just a different way of using the same tool, but with a different interface, so you can work better, or a way that just makes more sense. Some EQs have only knobs, some are just sliders. They all do the same job, but they look different, you use them differently, and so they're all valid options. What I'm using a lot are ReEQ, ReComp, ReXComp, and Retune. I'm also using ReDelay and sometimes a ReGate. But I use most of the stock plugins a lot, but I also have a ton of other plugins from SoundToys and T-Rex, Air plugin collection, all the Valhalla plugins. Let's say, for example, compression. I tend to use ReComp for compression that I don't want to be too obvious, just control, just taming things a little bit. Or if I'm doing sidechain compression, just because it's so simple to set up. I already have a preset saved, and so it's just kind of force of habit, maybe. But it's really easy to do sidechain compression with ReComp, which I tend to use not as an effect, but just as dynamic control. So let's say every time the kick goes, I want my bass to turn down 3 dB for a moment, just to let the kick cut through a little bit better. So it's a really simple task, and I don't need a fancy compressor to do that. And for EQ, I tend to use that just because it's so quick to use, but I also have lots of other EQs that are great, and I use them a lot too. But for basic track EQ, I use ReEQ. If I have problems that I need to fix, let's say with mid-side, I'll use the Tone Boosters EQ. If I need a dynamic EQ, I tend to go with the Tokyo Dawn Nova EQ. It's a great plugin as well, and that one's free. The low cost of Reaper makes it totally okay to spend a few $100s on plugins that you find useful, things that improve your workflow. You know you have several years before you have to make another paid upgrade for your DAW. So as great as the Reaper plugins are, don't be afraid of getting a bunch of other tools that will help you. Oh, and real quick, the ones that I feel are lacking are the reverbs. The Valhalla DSP reverbs are my favorites. I use a couple others, but mostly those ones. The Room, the Vintage Verb, the Plate, Shimmer, all fantastic plugins. If you have $200 to spend on plugins, just get a bunch of the Valhalla DSP plugins. You won't be disappointed.
Last question comes from Ben Peillow. What mics work well for podcasting, and how do you go about recording the mastering show or the home recording show when there's two of you?
I've used so many different mics over the years for the home recording show. I probably can't even list them all. The AT3035, the Shure SM7B, which is what I use now. I've used the Rode NTG2, that's this mic up here. I probably shouldn't have touched it, sorry. I've used the tube mic, I've used a CAD E100S, probably over a dozen different mics over the years. The SM7B is what works best for my voice. It kind of ended up being a little bit easier to process. That's going into the Golden Age Project Pre-73, and then going into an ART VLA2, which is a tube compressor that goes into my audio interface. That's only half the processing that goes into it. There's a lot of noise reduction and a bit of EQ, lots of compression, that kind of stuff. So as much as I like that signal chain, it's a lot of post-production work that actually makes it sound like what you're used to hearing. With Ian Shepherd, he just uses a blue Yeti mic. I think it's the Yeti or the Yeti Pro, and it's just USB into his computer. He does nothing else to it. When I'm mixing the mastering show, I do very little processing to him. A little bit of compression, a little bit of EQ. It's a pretty good sound as it is, and that could be his room, it could be his voice. I don't think it's that mic, because it's not a high-end mic, really. But anyways, it's really frustrating because I have like $1,000 worth of equipment behind my voice, in front of my voice, and his voice is so much easier to process. So anyways, that's my frustration with it. And when we're doing the show, we're just talking on Skype. We're recording ourselves locally, and he sends me the file, I mix it down. So pretty easy. This video was made possible by my patrons, patreon.com/thereaperblog. Patreon is a way for fans to sponsor their favorite creators. Sometimes it's YouTube creators, sometimes it's artists, comic book writers, podcasters, things like that. I use Patreon to help support and pay for everything that's going on with the Reaper blog. So please consider signing up for Patreon, $2, $5 a month. It really, really helps. Here's a list of people that helped support this episode of the Q&A series. And that's it. Thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter, support on Patreon, and visit reaperblog.net for a lot more tutorials.